Hi, my name is Cherry, and for the past couple years, I've been working on a webcomic that I've been releasing on Webtoon. For the majority of it, I used Procreate, but I started using Clip Studio Paint a few months ago. A brief tutorial on how I create webcomics using Clip Studio Paint. For the dimensions, I usually stick with the regular width of 800 and stretch the height down to 2000. Make sure I don't have to add more later. Clip Studio Paint also does this thing where it can break a single document or canvas into multiple canvases when you're making comics so that you can look at them sequentially. Then I lay out how I want the panels to look so I can have just like an idea of how it'll look fully set up later before doing a loose sketch of the content of each panel to work off of later so I don't have to look at the script as much. After laying everything out, I just clean up the sketch and add details to make sure everything is going to be clear when I move on to the line art. This is one of the more important parts so that you can get a better idea of how everything's going to look when you're finished. For line art, I usually use a brush with a good taper and pen pressure. It feels a lot like traditional art, which I do a lot more of in my spare time. Also, it just looks nicer in my opinion, because you can get sharper edges and like differences in line weight, which is a classically seen thing in traditional comics. I do the rendering of my comic, I usually just do some basic cell shading and then rim lights before a soft gradient for the shadows and lights to add more depth. I also add highlights to the hair, nose, cheeks, and eyelids to just give it like up. I do a red sort of airbrushing on the shadows on the skin so that it makes them look more lifelike, and because the skin is translucent. And then for the darker parts, I use a more like vibrant-ish blue so that it again looks more real. So for backgrounds, I used to use Minecraft on my iPad to get the depth right, but I can't do that anymore since I'm on my laptop and don't want to spend $30 on Minecraft. So I have just been trying my best. I would suggest somehow 3D modeling it, which is what I've been trying to do to varying successes. But yes, I also have a sort of map layout of each floor of the building that these characters are in, which I just used to reference. I write out everything that the characters are going to say in a bulk so that I can separate it out later in a raster layer. Usually just use the standard comic font that Clip Studio Paint gives you, but for my god characters that are shown in the interlude episodes, I give them their own fonts to differentiate them. You can also bold and italicize words to put emphasis on them to make it seem more natural to someone who reads it. For the speech bubbles, Clip Studio has its own brushes that allow you to make them, and you can change them depending on how a character is feeling and what they're saying. Alright, that's how I create comics on Clip Studio Paint. I am not a professional. These are just things I learned through my own process and work. Here's a list of the layers and types of layering I use and the opacities of them, just in case you want a little help, because I'm not very good at describing things with my words. Yeah, thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for the support in the past few videos. That's it. Thanks.